topic today is great expectations. And those of you who have read the book, which I did years ago, remember Miss Havisham and I believe there was Pitt and several other people. But that's something we'll discuss at the end, okay? But I want to let you know here lately, and Reverend K really gave me a good prelude into it because I've been scrolling through, and this isn't something I do, but here lately, I've become very involved with the hackers that come on. I'm not talking about the hackers who have taken over your bank accounts and all of that. I'm talking about the hackers who have these shortcuts to ways to create things, to bake food, to clean your house or declutter and all of that. So I've really gotten interested in that, and I do love the way people have come up with these ideas of ways to shorten your workload. I've been going through, I think the AI has caught on that I like hacking these people, and so they keep sending me stuff. And so I go through it almost religiously. I just sit there and I just watch whatever they're doing. If they're building a car, I just sit there and watch. I don't know how to do it, but I just sit there and watch it. So one day this hack came on and this guy promised that, and I'm not going to use the words they used on this hack because they didn't actually, but I don't want to get too far into my nursing background. But anyway, this hack was supposed to fix it so that you never ran out of this commodity that we ran very short of during the pandemic, and people were scurrying around trying to get it. So he said you were never going to run out of this, and I'll call it a commodity. And so when they don't speak, they tend to use their hands to demonstrate what they're talking about, show you the size, the shape, how they laid it, and you know, the proportions and all of that. So this guy started off with this cardboard tube, and he demonstrated to you what exactly this tube was, and you know, and he had on this blue glove, a blue latex glove, and he was demonstrating that. And then he took, now this was to help you not to run out of this commodity, but then he took a plastic cover and he covered this tube with it. He laid the tube down with this covering on it and cut it in half. Then he discarded the plastic and he brought out one of the masks that we were wearing during the pandemic, a blue one. He laid that out. He pulled it out, stretched it out so that the folds came out and it laid flat. And he cut both sides of the earlobes off. Then he laid this tube out and he cut the tube in 3 pieces. He laid it on top of this mask and he cut the mask to fit the tube. Now I'm sitting there trying to figure out what does this have to do with this commodity? But I was determined to learn. So I even had a book and paper. I was, you know, pen and paper, I'm going to get this. You know, I wasn't going to miss anything. Then he laid out a black piece of duct tape. And he cut the mask and all of those to fit, and he laid them on this duct tape. And he started folding the duct tape pretty much the way you would fold the American flag, made it in triangles and folded back and forth. And, you know, I'm sitting there going, what exactly does this have to do with this thing we're talking about? But I still watched. He got a jar of petroleum jelly, dipped this thing down in there and got a copious amount of it on there, just slapped it all in there and had it just really gluey. And he stuck it in a plastic bag. And he started running water in the bag and slapping on this bag. Boy, now I'm really confused. So then after a while he kept beating the bag and then he sprayed some Dawn dishwashing liquid in it and had it sudsy. And he was still slapping on his bag, getting it good and agitated, and he cut off the corner of the bag. And so water was running through the bag, soap coming out of it, soap going down through the hole. And he really started slapping that bag. And as he was slapping the bag, I'm getting more intrigued, though. You know, what is he doing? And when the video ended, he was still slapping that bag. You know, I was sitting there thinking to myself, are you that gullible? You're sitting here watching this thing, and it turned out about 20 minutes long, and there I was sitting there ready to take notes on how this guy was going to show me how to never run out of this commodity, and I had no idea what he was doing. You know, and so as I sat there, I started laughing. I said, you mean to tell me you sit here all this time and watch this man do all of this ridiculous stuff, going to take a note, and you don't have any idea what he was trying to do or what this meant? And I started laughing. And I just kept laughing at the idea that I kept sitting there waiting on this man to show me what he was going to do, and he never did. So after I had laughed myself, you know, laughed pretty much until I cried, because I thought, how gullible are you to sit there and watch that? So I said, well, maybe I'll go to the comment section and see what the comments are. And there was string after string after string of very angry comments. Very chaotic, you know, people confounded, belligerent. Some of them didn't even use words. They used all these quotation marks that let you know they were not happy. And so, anyway, what I saw was a long list of frustration, confusion, feelings of being let down, wasted time, and people who felt as though they were victimized. There was a deep sense of loss from all of these people, and here I am just laughing my head off. So after I had gotten through about 20, I'm saying between 20 and 30 of these very negative, angry comments, somebody had scrolled across ha 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 ha, and someone else had done this emoji where he's laughing so hard he's got these big rivers of tears coming out of his eyes. And that was pretty much where I was. And I was thinking to myself, God, all of these people are so angry over what is really a prank. And some of them were angry because he got paid for it. And so in some ways it was as if they had been cheated out of something. And I didn't see it that way. My expectation was to learn what this commodity was, but what I got out of it was a great laugh. I just thought that was the silliest thing. And the fact that I was sitting there watching it was even sillier, but I actually thought that was funny, you know. But that made me think, well, the truth of it is, ever since then, every time I think of it, I kind of get a laugh out of it. But I wonder about those other people. Every time they think of it, what do they get out of it? Is it the anger? Is it the frustration? Is it the letdown? Is it the feeling of being a victim? And my guess is that's probably it, because they haven't figured out another way to handle disappointment and not getting what they expect. So, there's another thing I want to tell you about related to that. Have any of you seen Forrest Gump? Okay. Those of you who haven't seen it, don't worry about it. I saw it for you. I have seen it so many times. Every time I see it, I just get on and watch Forrest Gump. And if you know anything about his character, he was not considered an intelligent person, but he relied a lot on instinct. And he had just lost his mother. And so Forrest's way of handling things was to run. And he would just take off and start running. That's what he did. And he ran from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the East Coast to the West Coast, trying to get over this grief. And so, as he was running, people started noticing. And some of them came up to him and said, Mr. Gump, we admire you. We've been watching you. And we want to do what you're doing. We want to support you, Mr. Gump. And if you knew Forrest Gump, Forrest just, okay, you know, whatever you want to do, kept running. And there's this crowd of people following behind him, running from the East Coast to the West Coast, just back and forth. And the crowd got bigger and bigger and bigger. And Oris, from the looks of it, I think once somebody asked him why he was running, and he said he liked to run. Nothing else. I don't think there was much other explanation as to why he was running. But there's this mob of people running across country with him, following him to support him and whatever he was running for. And then right in the middle of nowhere, he stops. And he says, I think I'll go home now. And everybody, what? What? Is that it? Is that it? Is that all you got to say? I'm tired. I'm going home. And he turned around and went walking back home. And there's all these people standing out in astonishment. This great expectation of what they thought he was going to do, because he was finally going to say something. And that was the magnitude of what he was going to say. Now, what they must have thought was that maybe a voice from heaven was going to boom down and tell them something, or maybe the mountain was going to come to Muhammad, or maybe they'd see Buddha on a Buddha tree, a Bodha tree. All of this expectation, you don't have a clue as to what you're expecting. You yourself need to put the expectation there. You can follow him, that's okay. But I don't think they realized that what they had done was bonding, and that they had gotten to see nature up close and personal, that they had along the way witnessed miracles that they had forgotten about or didn't pay attention to because they were watching this man. And so to them there was a huge letdown. They victimized themselves. They let themselves down. They needed to have their own expectation and build within themselves an understanding of why they were there. One of the reasons they could have been there was actually to support him. But if they were supporting him, they had to support him in letting him go home. Another thing I want to kind of tie in with that is this idea that we have to get what we expect. That's nice, but you may also get what you don't expect. And what I didn't expect when this guy was slapping that bag was a big laugh. But I think that was the best thing I could have gotten. I don't know, I knew to stockpile what I needed during the pandemic, before the pandemic, because I tended to read the paper and watch the news. But the people who didn't expect that to happen were greatly disappointed and felt like somebody had let them down. Somebody did, but the idea is that we still have to have our own expectations, and we still have to work towards what we need to be paying attention to. Like you said, doing our own treasure mapping. So, if you remember, and I forgot to look up his name, I meant to look up Marie Curie's husband's name. And Reverend Kay would be much better at this, and imagine that this was an element that they were looking for, radium right. But they had this expectation of finding out whatever this was supposed to show up as, or whatever, radium. And they had experimented and come up with what they felt was going to be the end product. But after this experiment, they were disillusioned because they didn't see anything. And so Marie woke up according to the movie, didn't read the book, but Marie woke up in the middle of the night and she said, what if that's it? Because the dish that they had looked at was empty. And she said, what if that's it? And so they got up in the middle of the night and they went back in there and the bowl was glowing. There was nothing they could see in the bowl but the glowing. And that's what happens when we reach that point at which what we can't see starts to glow. And that glow has a lot of names. Some people would call it God, some people would say Allah, some would say Buddha, whatever name you want to give it to. But that's that sight unseen that we get when our expectations are realized or not realized in whatever way they show up. And so the idea is that whatever we think is nothing, because it doesn't reach our perception of what something is, that's the something. That's the, is that it? That's it. Whatever it shows up at, that's it. And it may be, as some religions say, it's not the object that you can touch, it's the space that surrounds it. It's like the aura that we all have. It's not necessarily those of us who are sitting in the chair, it's the aura that surrounds and is within. And this is where the expectation is, that you're given from within this expectation to work with. And it's not the same for any of us. Even identical twins, it's just not the same. Even if they say they want the same thing, it's not the same. It's the golden glow within. So I want us to keep in mind the idea of Miss Havisham. She had this expectation to marry this man. She spent her whole life in regret, in anger, in bitterness. And everyone around her that she touched was given a dose of this dark energy you were talking about. So there are some times when it's justifiable to be angry. There are some times when it's justifiable to be frustrated or confused. But this man slapping the bag didn't warrant all that he got. And I might give him $1 or $2 if I ever see him. But let's figure out what our expectations are and what we consider great. And even the smallest expectation is great. We can't measure what great is, and we can't measure what small is. It's all God. So I thank you, and I hope that helps somebody.